Welcome, welcome. And today we are talking astrocartography. Have you ever heard of it? Guys, I had never heard of it before. And the moment I did, I went down the rabbit hole and I had to bring an expert guest. This is Soul Mastery, and I am your host, Chaitali Desai. And today we are welcoming Martha Clark. I cannot wait for you guys to hear all of the goodness that she's about to share. Welcome, Martha. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me, Chaitali. It's interesting to hear you say it's like a rabbit hole. That's exactly how I feel as well.
Seriously, though, right?
Astrocartography is just this rabbit hole that you just keep going down and down and down. It's great. I love it.
I, for those of who have never even heard of it, fill me in. We're gonna get to
Yeah.
like who you are and all of that, but let's quickly just say like, what does astrocartography mean?
Well, basically, what it does is, your natal birth chart with astrology is, where the planets were born when you came into this world. It's basically like what your soul came into this lifetime to learn and experience. Astrocartography then is when you regenerate your chart as if you've been born somewhere else. And then so you regenerate the same chart. Maybe say if you were born in San Francisco, you can regenerate it for Nice in France, or for, Boston, or for New York, or for Paris. And then what you do after that is you generate planetary lines to help people find the most supportive places to live and work. So it's mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing.
Okay, so we're gonna have to back up a little bit. First of
Yeah.
all, okay, not even before, how did you get into this? How Where did you start? So tell us about Martha first, and then we can get
Okay.
into all the juiciness because I think we need backstory to understand the full
Yeah,
story.
absolutely. Yeah, well, I went to an astrologer during my divorce. This is going way back to 2007, because I had tried everything. I had tried counseling, I had tried therapy, I had tried alternative therapies, and nothing was working. Nothing in my marriage was working. And when I went to the astrologer, suddenly, like, it was like a light bulb went off in my mind. It was like, oh, so this is who I really am, not who society expects me to be or my family expects me to be. And the astrologer at the time was using astrocartography as part even of an initial consultation. So, he got the map out and looked at places in Europe that were good for me. And what was completely mind blowing was a lot of them were places I'd lived as a teenager or in my
Oh,
20s. Yeah. And it was like, so I like astrocartography is something that I just got from the get go.
yeah,
I really, really
that
did. Like
definitely makes
when
sense.
he started talking about my healing line going through St. Gallen in Switzerland, and I have a close friend in Switzerland, and my friendship with him was very healing. Or my learning line went through Göttingen in Germany. That's where I worked as an au pair when I was 16, and I was studying German like for 10 hours a week, as well as repeating my part of my leaving cert, which is like your end of school exams. So I
Okay.
was doing that on my learning line. So that's why I got astrocartography straight away, because I'd already traveled, not hugely, but enough to know that what he was talking about, it just made sense.
So how did he pick this other place? Do you know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
I was born in India, right? How would we
Okay.
know what else to pick? Like, do I just
Exactly.
pick
Yeah.
any place
I
or
get asked that all the time because very often clients want me to pick the place, but they have to pick the place. And when you pick places, you'll find when we do the charts, there's always a resonance with those places. And even if you're drawn to places but don't actually move there, you will find the other way you manifest it is you bring people into your life from those places.
and how
Um,
cool, right? To be living in
yeah,
this day and time where social
yeah.
media, the internet has literally made that possible.
Absolutely, yeah, more than ever, So that's why, for example, very often our favorite singers or our favorite songwriters or our favorite poets or our favorite writers come from places where our own astrology lines are very strong. But before we go to astrocartography, people always have to have it's always better if they have a transit reading done first, because the natal birth chart is, as I said, it's like your astrological birth cert. It's like what your soul came into this lifetime to learn and experience, and the
Right.
lessons you needed to have to learn and grow. But then the
So when
planets
you
are all
say
always moving. So
so
then
when
you
you
have
say like your natal chart, so that's like the actual I was born on this
when
date, this time,
it's, yeah, and
that's
this
what
is
that
where the
looks like.
planets were, and this is how the
And
planets were
then
talking to each other.
transit. is
Transits
what?
then is what's happening now in your chart. It's where the planets are now and what's
So
been
in real
triggered
time.
now in real time. Yeah. And it's,
Okay.
it's really useful to have that done before astrocartography, because constantly I will find that people think they're moving to, to find love or to get a better job. But the transits will show that they're really moving maybe for a more spiritual life or a more creative life, or to just go
Funny
away
how it
and
works that
write.
way, right?
Yeah, so that's why the transit reading is really important, because people always think it goes straight to astrocartography, but the transits are what's triggering the desire to move. There might be a desire to move to
Okay.
somewhere that feels more like home. Like I've just come back from 3 weeks in Italy, and I was close to my moon line and everything. I was just so effortlessly at home. It was amazing. It was great. I'm going back.
So let's break that down just a little bit more, because I know, like,
Yeah,
for myself too, when I'm so passionate about something, I can just talk about it and talk about it. But if we dial it down and someone is
yeah,
coming to you and says, Martha, what? We're talking about moon lines and transit lines and the sun.
yeah.
And all I thought I needed to know was that my sun is in Scorpio. Like, fill me in. Why are all of these different terms important? Why and how does that help us, not only in astrocartography, right?
Yeah.
But like, what do I do with this information after you've given it to me?
Well, for example, if somebody has their sun in the first house in their natal chart, then they'll have kind of quite a strong sense of self, because the sun is like how you shine and where you shine. And if they move to somewhere in the
Okay.
world where the sun is in the 10th house, then they'll really shine, because the 10th house is your true vocation. If somebody has the moon maybe in their 7th house, then they will feel emotionally nurtured being in a relationship, because the 7th house is relationships. It is also long-term friendships. If they move somewhere then to where the moon moves to their 4th house, they'll feel really at home in that place, because the 4th house is all about home. Like when I was
Okay.
living in Provincetown, I had the sun, moon, Mercury, and Venus all on the bottom of my chart, which is home and roots and family of origin. And I had a really fulfilling, a really home-like life there. And I was hugely part of the community. And as I said, it goes back to, you know, people think they're moving for their career, but time and time again, they're often craving a more spiritual life or a more soulful life or a deeper connection to community, because our sense of community is one of the most important things in our lives. And I think we, in the days of social media, we've kind of lost touch of that. But like feeling connected to the community, feeling valued, feeling we matter, feeling we give something, that's just so important. And astrocartography can really help with that. Or again, time and time again, I have clients who've no idea how creative they are, and I will help them move maybe to a Venus line or a Neptune line, which will help them enhance their creativity. But if they're going through a Neptune transit, then dreaminess and creativity is going to be enhanced anyway. But if it's a challenging transit, then they'll have a lot of work to do. If it's a flowing transit, then it will happen easily. Like I moved to Italy when Neptune was trining my Neptune, which meant Neptune was just flowing into my Neptune. So I just basically packed my bags and said, I'm off to Italy. And it all worked out. And it was very dreamy and very creative and very floaty, but it all worked out. It was great.
Oh, that's beautiful. So
Yeah.
now let's say I'm listening to this podcast episode, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what what would I like, how would I know that it's time to have this reading with you or to have this session?
Well,
Like, what would
usually
be like the prompt?
the prompt tends to be that the same themes are coming up in someone's life. The prompt tends to be that they're in yet another relationship that's not working, and the themes as to why it's not working are the same. Or they may have a boss that's triggering them all the time. Or they just know they're creative, but they don't know how to go about it or how to express it. So there's very often, or again, I've quite a lot of clients at the moment who want to move just because of the weather, because the weather where they live is just really getting to them, and they just crave sunshine, and they're just going like, I've had enough. I've been there for the family, I've been there for the kids are getting older. Now it's my time. And I mean, I understand the whole weather thing. I mean, I'm only back here in Ireland since Friday, and I'm looking out at grey skies. Like there was a bit of a blue sky today now for a few hours, but I've been looking at grey skies since I came back. And I would be somebody who craves sunshine. Where are you based
Yeah.
at the moment?
So currently I live just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but
Okay.
we have we're a corporate family. We have moved so much and across so
Right.
many different continents. And I'll tell you a funny story, and I think it'll resonate with you. Um, on my first anniversary, my husband is from Zambia. We're both
Okay.
native Indian, but we
Okay.
grew up in different parts. Yeah. So he grew up in Zambia. So I was like, oh, I would love to go. So we're going to go and blah, blah, blah. And I remember just thinking, I'm like, how cool. I always wanted to live in South Africa, right?
Yeah.
Then we take our children, maybe in 2010, 2011, somewhere around that time. And that time we had the opportunity to go to South Africa. I'd only dreamt of South at that time. And as we are flying, we're still in the air, about to land into Cape Town. I turned to my husband, completely random, on a whim. I'm like, if we ever get the chance, we will live here.
Oh, wow.
Fast forward,
Oh,
we got the opportunity to not only live in South Africa, but to live in Franschhoek, where like the vineyards are, and we happened to visit this area on that trip. There was something about the land. I was literally
oh,
still
that's a
in the
huge thing,
air.
actually. Yeah, yeah.
The
And so,
land
how
was
many years
so
later? How many years later did you move there?
so um under 10 years for sure. Let's see.
Okay.
By 8 years later, maybe it's under 10 years for sure. It was
And
within
what was
that
it about the
decade.
land?
It's so dark
Okay.
and it is so rich. And I'm
Wow.
not a farmer, but I was like, give me a farm. I didn't have one, but like it was just calling, like the
Yeah.
soil. It's such, it
Wow.
sounds so, I know it'll resonate with you, but it was
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
the land was calling me home.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
sure enough, we lived there. And both my husband and I separately had different desires. I just happened to say it out loud. In his mind, he wanted to live in Franschhoek because of the vineyards, the mountains. Like it is absolutely stunning.
Wow.
Absolutely stunning. And sure enough, it's where we lived. Crazy,
Well,
isn't it?
my
How
my
like
mother,
time
I
and
know my
place.
mother had a great story that she only told me about 3 years before she died. She was 92 when she died. And she told me that when we were teenagers, the father of one of our students invited her to Italy on an all expenses paid holiday on his yacht. She didn't go, and she didn't tell
Oh,
us. Something in my mother knew that if I'd gone to Italy at 14, I'd never have come back.
oh wow.
Something in her knew, you know?
It is magical. And as we're talking about this, it almost brings me back to childhood too. I
Yeah.
always wanted to live on Long Island, New York.
Oh, wow.
Sure enough,
Did
I
you?
just moved to Pennsylvania from Long Island, New York.
And what was Long
Yeah,
Island like
so
to live in?
it was, yeah, completely different than South Africa, but it was
Hmm.
still wonderful, the hustle and
Yeah.
bustle, because we were close enough to the city. But
Yeah.
I don't know, it was just something about it. But how funny. I didn't even occur, like I didn't even connect all of that until we brought up this
Well, it's interesting that you're living
astrocartography.
in Philadelphia, and I have strong planetary lines going through Philadelphia. So there you go. So remember
Oh
what I said,
wow.
like you bring people into your life from places where you have strong resonance. It's like when I was in Boston. I mean, I went over with like not much money in my back pocket. This is what, 5 years ago now when I went there for 3 months, and no clients, and just the promise of a holistic fair and working in a shop. But the woman in the shop had a lot of Sagittarian energy, and my chart changed so that I had a lot of fire going up to my midheaven, because the midheaven is the highest point of aspiration in your chart, and it was ruled by Jupiter, which is all about traveling and adventure. I mean, basically, it was like flying over in Concorde and getting off and jumping onto a Harley Davidson. I mean, all I did was say yes to everything.
I used to live in Boston.
Okay, and how
Oh
did you
my
feel?
gosh, I have
How
like
did
my
you feel
fist
when you lived
bumps.
in Boston versus Philadelphia? Did it
Oh,
feel
so
much
I lived
different?
in Boston. I'm telling you, I have lived in so many places. People get
Yeah.
tired of hearing it, but I lived in Boston in 2002, maybe
Okay.
2001. And I was there for my internship at Brigham and Women's
Oh, good. Right.
University. And I
Yeah.
was, wow, this is such a
Yeah.
wild
Yeah.
conversation.
It
For those
is.
that are
Yeah.
listening, we would love to know, like, where have you been in the world where you can feel this like connection? Because I know people are going to want to write it off as coincidence, maybe,
It's
or
not.
oh,
No, it's not.
whatever. but it's not.
No, it's
And
not. I
the
mean, I also had like a Juno line when Juno was like love and marriage, like north of Sardinia, and certainly my relationship back here, it felt like it deepened and intensified while I was gone, and then when I came back here. But it's like this, the interesting thing about astrocartography, it kind of increased in popularity during COVID because an awful lot of people were saying, "Do you know what? I'm done with these restrictions. I'm out of here." The funniest one I had was a client who wanted to move to Canada with her husband and young son. And they were going to have difficulties getting a visa because they had to have either 300,000 in their bank account or a house. And if they sold that, they had to sell the house to have the money. So they said, "Do you know what? We're selling the house and we're buying a camper van." They traveled around America in a camper van during COVID and had the time of their lives. Then went to Italy and
oh,
bought a tiny little flat there. And now they're living in Ireland. And it's all
oh
worked
wow.
out. Yeah, this is the yeah. First they were going to go to Canada and then they traveled around America instead, and then lived in Italy for 6 months, and they're now in Ireland. But it's just like COVID really propelled people to say, "Do you know what? I'm out of here. I'm done with this." It's like there was a huge increase in people selling their houses and buying boats and going off sailing. And when
Yeah.
you think about it, like, why wouldn't people do that? It's like I'm not going to wait till I've retired anymore. I'm just going to sell my house now or rent out my house and, rent a sailboat and just travel around the world. There's been a huge increase in people buying boats and yachts, massive. And
You know,
it's
I
not
walked
it's
into
it, it's not as expensive a lifestyle as you think. Like if I wanted to have a berth on the marina in Alghero for the whole year, it's like €5,000. That's about $6,000. That's not a lot.
That's not bad at all. How
That's not
wild.
bad
You
at
know, I
all.
walked into this interview or into this conversation with a whole different thought process. And now I feel like my brain is trying to catch up with the conversation.
Yeah, you want
So
to buy a boat in San Francisco or something, yeah.
I don't want to buy a boat, but I
Yeah.
definitely want to own lots of houses where I can just kind of, puddle jump every so often and just kind of go wherever I want. Um, that's always been my soul, though. I have always I remember being a child wanting to be like a UN translator so I could just travel the
Okay.
world. And it's so wild because if you look at my circle, it's
Uh-huh.
as if I brought all of the translators to me. It's
Probably,
fascinating
yeah.
just because of where everyone has come from and like their backstories.
Yeah.
So now I know we have people really contemplating, holy shit, this is something that I need to delve into. Martha,
Yeah.
where are people going to find you? Or how
On
can they get
my
in touch with you?
website is marthaclarkastrology.com. You can go online there and book a session there. You can book a natal transit and astrocartography. I don't insist on a natal transit before astrocartography anymore, but you will get much more from the session if you have those sessions beforehand. I also give free webinars once a month. So I have a webinar coming up on the 23rd of May on the astrocartography of Neptune lines. So I have free web, and that's on my website
Oh,
as well. You just
that's
go
interesting.
marthaclarkastrology.com and
Is
click
Neptune?
under events. Yeah. Yeah, because Neptune lines are like, your
Okay. Oh,
Venus is kind of your ordinary everyday creativity. Neptune is kind of like your higher creativity. It's like when you sit down to paint and after a few hours, you've no idea what you've painted or where the idea came from. Neptune is also kind of where you give back to
oh,
society. It's also our higher spirituality. Yeah, and I write blogs every 2 weeks as well. So if people want to learn more about astrology, they can go onto the blog section of the website. And then I send out a
oh,
newsletter
perfect.
every week so people can sign up for the newsletter on my website as well. And as I said, because the other interesting thing that I've seen happening in the last 6 months is people renting places in different parts of the world and then re-renting them as Airbnb, and that's a way to get income. Like that's a whole new thing. That's completely new. And that's, because the whole digital nomad thing is really coming into its own now. I mean, certainly
Correct.
we're seeing these co-working centres all over the world. I'm seeing more and more groups of co-working centres. I know of at least 5 or 6 companies that have co-working centres, in several different continents. And that is the way I think, humanity is going to go forward, given that, as I said, one of our biggest needs is the need for connection. In
Connection.
co-working, you can have your own room, then you can work in your room or you can work in the co-working. Then a lot of those places have yoga, they've Pilates, they've therapy, they've healthy foods, they've meditation. And that's really what people are longing for and seeking for, I think, more than ever. I'm not
I
sure.
think
Have you
so
seen
too.
that change as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it, and what I've also been really noticing is the corporate wellness aspect.
Yeah.
I'll call it corporate wellness, but it's introducing literally mind, body, soul.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was very hard driven that it's just business.
Hmm.
But business, it's all encompassing, isn't
Oh,
it? Because you're
absolutely. Yeah.
bringing your entire being into it.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I love it. And I think it's
Yeah.
been fascinating. And for humanity moving forward, I'm really interested to see how it shifts us and elevates us.
Yeah.
Because we've been kind of sitting in that lower level for quite some time now. And as we're
Yeah.
coming out, it's
Yeah.
almost like it's almost as if people are coming out with new eyes or a new way to
Yeah.
see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so it should be, I don't want to say it should be interesting, but I'm curious to watch the evolution.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people are becoming more fluid with their lifestyles. Like, for
Oh, that's a
example, I
good way to
bought
put
this
it.
house last December and I'm renting it through an agency for the summer and through Airbnb. And then I have a long term rental from September. And the income from that is going to give me the freedom to travel and to sail and then to see clients as I sail. And I mean, that wouldn't have been even in the back of my mind 3 or 4 years ago. But it goes back to people that during COVID who said, like, do you know what? I'm out of here. I'm buying a camper van, I'm buying a boat, I'm really living the life I've always wanted to live. Or the number of clients I've had that have, gone places for a couple of weeks to write books. And, self-publishing is really coming into its own now, and
Yeah.
podcasts, and it's the way forward. And we're all connecting in a different way. We're connecting more online, but we also need the kind of connection with our community around us as well. And that's why it's been interesting to watch the increase in the co-working centers all around not just in Europe but all around the world.
All around the world, yeah.
I came across a center there a couple of days ago. They have centers in Latin America, Australia, New Zealand, North America, Europe, which is fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's going to be the way forward. And even for the company, they're still going to be able to incorporate that whole holistic style to it.
Oh,
And so I think
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing what happens as we
Yeah.
move forward as
Yeah. Yeah.
humanity.
Yeah.
Martha, I loved this conversation. And for those of
Great.
you who are so curious, like I am now, about astrocartography and really how it's been playing in your life, definitely hop on Martha's website and book a session, because I think just based on this conversation, there's more to us than we realize, and how
Oh,
cool
absolutely. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see and how to bring more of that connection, more of that collaboration in.
Yeah.
Martha, thank
Yeah.
you so much for this. This was so
You're very welcome.
eye-opening, and
Thank
I'm
you.
curious than I already was. I'm
Thank you
wishing
so
you
much.
guys a
It's so
beautiful
lovely to be
day.
here.
Yes, thank you. For those who are ready to connect with Martha, definitely check the show notes. You'll see all her information there. Hop on her Neptune's workshop on the 23rd, you said, correct, of May?
Yeah. It's Tuesday week. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And for
And
those
if
of
you
you who
can't
have
make it
enjoyed
live,
this
there'll be a
episode,
recording available. Yeah.
okay, perfect. You guys will be able to find all the details on the website. And again, thank you all for tuning in. And remember, it's time to rise. Let's go.